Hello and welcome back to our literary deep dive into the Quintessential Quintuplets. Today we're going to continue our discussion on Volume 5, so that means we're going to take a brief look at the plot of chapters 36 through 41. Then we're going to discuss 5 key takeaways from this volume. And then we're going to provide some analysis and make some predictions. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to be notified when more episodes come out, please consider subscribing. But with that being said, let's jump right into chapter 36, The Labor Thanksgiving Tour, Part 1. So chapter 36 starts with Miku and Ichika texting Futaro and asking him on a date. These two characters sort of act as a foil to one another in this volume, which we'll get into more later, but Futaro rejects both of their proposals and plans on spending his day studying. His sister Raya, however, tells Futaro that he should get Yotsuba a gift. This feels like sort of a big reveal since it tells us that Futaro talked a lot about Yotsuba specifically when he told Raya about his trip. It's also notable that Futaro rejected hanging out with Miku and Ichika, but sort of went out of his way to see Yotsuba in person. For Yotsuba's gift, Yotsuba and Futaro go on what is basically a date, and Yotsuba also calls it a date. They go to a fancy restaurant, a spa, a movie, and even go shopping. I feel like Yotsuba seems a little out of character in this chapter. It may be that this is sort of the real Yotsuba when she's away from her sisters, or that she's just excited to be with Futaro. But her enthusiasm for the more lavish things feels different from her more normal, help anyone be selfless attitude. It's later revealed that all of these things they're doing connect to her sisters in one way or another, but besides the shirt that she buys for Nino, she was still the one experiencing them. It's not like she got food for Itsuki or got a gift card to the spa for Miku. I suppose that ultimately, though, this was all to reflect that she doesn't have a good sense of who she is when she's apart from her sisters, and since she's so selfless, she sort of doesn't know what she wants. While they shop, Futaro starts to think about the girl he met 5 years ago. Yotsuba seems to sort of remind him of her, and yet he tells himself that the girl isn't one of the Quints, and he sort of needs to let that go. This brings us to chapter 37, The Labor Thanksgiving Tour, Part 2. So it turns out that Miku and Ichika were also at the same store. Futaro isn't sure if they'll freak out about him being with Yotsuba or if they'll be really chill about it. And typical hijinks basically ensue while Yotsuba tries to hide Futaro from the two sisters. Ultimately, they narrowly make their escape, only to almost bump into Itsuki, who's hanging out with Raya. To avoid everyone, they end up going to a park. To add to my previous point about Yotsuba feeling a bit off, it's implied in this chapter that she was sort of doing all that fancy stuff to impress Futaro, which makes a lot more sense for her character. Here, they swing and enjoy the view. Futaro has a lot of fun during this, and he laughs really hard, which, according to Yotsuba, is exactly what she wanted. And this brings us to chapter 38, The Living Room Confession. So, it's almost finals week, but the Quints are busy doing their own things. Futaro joins Miku and Ichika as they babysit the chief's daughter. And if you don't remember the chief, that's sort of the boss of Ichika in her acting world. This leads to them all playing house, where Futaro plays the chief and Miku and Ichika play his coworkers, who just so happen to be in love with him, and as you can guess, hijinks ensue. The most important moment from this chapter, however, is when Miku asks Futaro to go out. He mistakes her confession for her still playing house, but it is notable to the audience that she's getting way more confident. The chief's daughter makes both girls confess why they like Futaro, who again is sort of playing the chief. Ichika says that she likes that he has a manly side, while Miku likes that he's smart, dependable, tall, and good-looking. Most importantly, however, she likes that he's empathetic. At the end, Miku observes that she should want Futaro all to herself, but she also enjoys the interactions he has with all of the Quints and how they all sort of get along, which Ichika agrees with. And this brings us to chapter 39, The Seven Goodbyes, part 1. So, the group meets together to study in preparation of finals week. Futaro stayed up all night making the group a packet of study materials, and he ends up running a bit late. He tells Itsuki that he's trying to set a good example, which seems to resonate with her. Miku and Nino, however, can't seem to stop bickering. They aren't quite fighting, but they also aren't getting along, and it's more like they're pushing each other's buttons. This, however, continues to escalate and build until there is a massive confrontation on the stairs. Basically, Nino tries to storm off, Futaro tries to get her to return, Miku hands Nino her study packet, Nino accidentally knocks the packet out of Miku's hands, Miku demands that Nino pick up the packet, and then Itsuki, in a shocking moment, slaps Nino across the face and demands that she apologize. And this leads us to chapter 40, which is part 2 of the 7 Goodbyes. So this chapter covers the fallout from the major conflict in chapter 39. So to recount, Nino slapped Itsuki back, but Itsuki didn't back down. Nino didn't realize that the packets were handwritten, and when she's confronted with the truth, she gets intensely embarrassed and overwhelmed, which results in her lashing out. I feel like Nino's actions here are actually really accurate to human psychology, even if they aren't admirable. Nino feels like everyone is basically picking Futaro's side, and so she decides to move out, claiming that the shared apartment is rotting her. Itsuki gets flustered by this and proclaims that she is going to move out as well. Apparently, after Futaro left, the fighting died down for a bit, but then it picked up again. Ultimately, Itsuki and Nino both run away from home. Ichika and Yotsuba have left for reasons that remain unclear, so Futaro and Miku have to go looking for Itsuki and Nino alone. They track down Nino to a hotel, but she resists all of their efforts at reconciliation. She doubles down on hating Futaro and claims that she wishes it was Kintaro who was their tutor. Remember, Kintaro actually is Futaro. It turns out that Itsuki forgot her wallet at the apartment, so to Futaro's great surprise, she has decided to stay at his place. Futaro isn't able to sleep that night, but neither is Itsuki. She tells Futaro that there is something she needs to tell him and suggests that they go on a walk to look at the moon. And that brings us to chapter 41, The 7 Goodbyes, part 3. So, Futaro and Itsuki walk together and talk. Itsuki reveals that they actually have been poor for most of their lives. Their mother was raising them alone, and it wasn't until she married their current father that they came into wealth. Their mother worked tirelessly to take care of the Quints, so Itsuki decided that she would play the role of the mother in her absence. It's sort of her way of, honoring her mother. In response to this, Futaro says that he will play the role of the father, but then he sort of gets flustered and takes this back. There seems to be someone listening to them in the woods during this conversation, but the two don't really investigate it any further. Itsuki tells Futaro that the moon is beautiful, which is an indirect way of saying I love you. It's kind of unclear if Itsuki knows this, but Futaro assumes she doesn't know about that sort of double meaning. So after this conversation, Futaro tries to wrangle the Quints back into studying. It turns out that the reason Yotsuba keeps running off is because she's actually participating on the track team and once again filling in for someone, which is once again taking away from her studying. This time, however, she decides not to abandon the team. Nino refuses to leave the hotel and claims that passing her exams doesn't matter to her. Itsuki is still sort of distracted from studying with the whole fight going on, so Miku and Ichika are sort of the only ones studying, but they're doing it on their own. Futaro gets depressed about things, including his influence on the Quints. As he sits and broods on this, a mysterious woman approaches, and on the last panel, it's revealed that this is apparently the girl from 5 years ago. And that sort of concludes the plot for Volume 5. So I want to take a moment to look at 5 key takeaways. So, number 1, Futaro revealed his entire backstory and how he met a mysterious girl 5 years ago. And that sort of explains who the girl is in the photo that we've seen earlier in the series. He also revealed that he swore he would become someone that somebody would need someday, and that's the reason he studies so hard. Number 2, Ichika and Miku are now sort of serving as foils to one another. Interestingly enough, though, in this volume, the tables seem to have totally turned when it comes to their demeanor. Previously, Ichika was sort of the confident big sister who was also the actress, and she was sort of flirty with Futaro in a very confident and self-assured way, while Miku was too shy to really express herself. Now, Miku is super direct and confident, while Ichika is actually much more shy, and Ichika is the one sort of struggling with her feelings as to whether she wants Futaro all to herself, or if, Miku sort of deserves Futaro because she struck first and all that stuff. Number 3, Futaro has earned Itsuki's trust enough that she is willing to stand up for him against her sisters. Previously, she was very suspicious of him, and, they had their whole fight from the beginning where they got off on the wrong foot, but now she's willing to stand up for Futaro and going as far as slapping Nino. Number 4, Yotsuba definitely seems to be romantically interested in Futaro, and he seems to enjoy hanging out with her more than the others, since he rejected hanging out with Miku and Ichika, but he went straight to Yotsuba when he had to get her a gift. This is also interesting because Yotsuba, it seemed, implied that she was into him, and she had the whole confession, but then she took it back and said she was just joking, but then it seemed very important to her that the two of them hang out during the trip, but now it seems much more confirmed that she's interested in him. And then number 5, we learned that the Quints weren't always rich and that their current father is actually their stepfather. And then beyond that, I want to sort of do what we always do, which is sort of a relationship status update. Where are all of the girls standing in their relationship to Futaro as of this chapter, or this volume? So, Yotsuba. Yotsuba and Futaro actually go on a full date in this volume, and they seem to get along well. As noted earlier, Futaro chose to hang out with Yotsuba even after rejecting Miku and Ichika, which feels very noteworthy. Itsuki. Itsuki is the one that Futaro opens up to about the girl from 5 years ago, so she's earned his trust. She also stays at his house, gets along with his sister, and defends him against Nino. There's also a moment where she says that she's sort of the mother of the sisters, and he says he would be the father, which clearly sort of has a married connotation to it. Miku. Miku confesses to Futaro and asks him to go out in this chapter. However, it's unfortunately sort of misinterpreted by Futaro. She also is able to clearly articulate why she likes him and has gained a lot of confidence when it comes to expressing her feelings. And so I feel like it's notable that the other girls seem to like him but not totally know why, while Miku knows exactly why she likes him. It is also notable, however, that Futaro turned down her Labor Thanksgiving Day date, so she sort of lost a lot of points there. And then Ichika. I feel like Ichika was sort of more in the background in this volume. There was a moment where Futaro was able to tell her apart from her sisters based on her handwriting, but he kind of can do that with all of them. And in this volume, she also sort of sacrifices her feelings to help Miku when she gives them movie tickets and sort of tries to set them up on a date. And then Nino. Nino has taken a massive step backwards and seems to be lashing out emotionally at Futaro. It's sort of unclear if she really believes in her hatred for him, but she certainly outwardly seems to hate him a lot right now. And then finally, I want to bring up a couple other interesting points. So, what was up with that whole scene where it seems like someone is stalking Futaro and Itsuki in the bushes? Was that supposed to be Nino, the mystery girl who shows up later, or someone else? That seemed like a weird moment, and it was sort of odd that the characters just sort of dropped it. Also, if I'm remembering things correctly, Yotsuba confessed first when she was sort of, resting Futaro in her lap when he was half sick, half pretending to be sick, but she said that was a joke. Miku confessed second, but it was misinterpreted as being part of a game. And now Itsuki has accidentally confessed via the whole "isn't the moon beautiful" comment. And I'd have to look back at my notes, but didn't Ichika sort of confess while Futaro was sleeping in her lap? I don't remember if she actually fully confessed or not, but I feel like Nino has also technically confessed at this point, but she was sort of confessing to Kintaro instead of Futaro. But it's interesting that now, in one way or another, they've all sort of confessed to him. It's interesting also how much the finals are now mirroring the midterms, which makes me sort of nervous about how their grades are going to turn out. But with that being said, I'm going to wrap up today's episode on Volume 5, so that's also going to wrap up the whole literary deep dive on Volume 5. If you're enjoying this content, please consider giving the video a like, and if you want to be notified when the episode on Volume 6 comes out, please consider subscribing. But yeah, thanks for checking this out, and I will see you in the next one, but until then, take care.